All right, Heat fans. So I know most of us are going to say that this offseason is a disaster. And in my opinion, it is definitely not a disaster. It's not a good offseason, but it's not a bad offseason. And it's not even an offseason that's completely over. So I would say hold your judgment until the offseason is actually completed. But I don't believe, regardless if we trade for a player or not, that this is a bad offseason. It's not a good one, but it's not a bad offseason. I would just say it's a neutral, it's a C if you had to give it a grade. It's an average offseason. So there's a couple things we need to talk about. I feel like most people feel like it's a bad offseason because they went into the summer thinking that we're going to get Kevin Durant or Donovan Mitchell. The problem with that is the Rudy Gobert trade happened, and I think that really ruined the value for other players that are really good that are going to be traded. So we know Kevin Durant wanted a trade. He wanted a trade, and Donovan Mitchell may or may not have been available. It seems like he's available. It seems like they're blowing it up in Utah. But I believe that Rudy Gobert trade basically pushed the price up on those two players. And so every team that's been in negotiation with those two teams, all the trades have fallen through because they're offering XYZ, and Utah and the Nets are like, no, we don't want that. We know in Miami, they were saying that we didn't want to trade Bam. But I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I think even if we wanted to trade Bam, they also have to find someone to take Ben Simmons. And I don't know who would take Ben Simmons. He sucks. In my opinion, he sucks. I don't care about his defensive stats. In my opinion, he sucks because he has a mental issue. He needs to shoot the ball. When you can't dunk on 6-foot Trae Young in the playoffs, that's where I knew something was wrong with him. So most teams are kind of like, no, we don't want Ben Simmons. He seems like he's a head case. There's something wrong with him. So that's what you got to consider with the Kevin Durant trade. So even if we were to give up Bam, who's going to take Ben Simmons? Also, they're saying that teams don't want to help other teams acquire stars like Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Durant. So that's another thing that's going on and another thing you got to consider. So don't be mad at the Miami Heat because these trades aren't going through, because they're also not going through for other teams. Another thing we need to talk about is the loss of PJ Tucker, which is somewhat overrated. I like PJ Tucker. We share the same birthday. He's a tough player. There's nothing to not like about PJ Tucker. But the idea that we didn't pay a 37-year-old PJ Tucker, for 3 years, $10 million, $11 million a year is ridiculous. I mean, let the Sixers take him. He'll probably do well with the Sixers. But why would you pay PJ Tucker $10, $11 million for 3 years? And he's 37, going to be 40 at the end of that contract. It's dumb. So Andy's doing a good job by not signing him. That should never be a negative. I hate when I'm listening to these videos and they're giving us a grade, and they give us a bad grade because we lost PJ Tucker. Like, come on, guys. I mean, he's good, but he's not like a superstar. Like, relax. So I hope Heat fans aren't bummed out about that. I think most Heat fans already know, it's 6'5" PJ Tucker. We'll find another small ball forward. Apparently, we're thinking about starting Caleb Martin. We'll see how that goes because he's kind of undersized weight-wise. But that should never be a negative. But we do got to remember we were able to retain Victor Oladipo and Caleb Martin. They're good young players. They're not superstars. Maybe Depot can kind of come back to where he was pre-injury. We know he has the skill, but at this point, I don't know if maybe it's a mental thing, but we know Victor Oladipo has the skill. In my opinion, he should have started in Game 7. I like Strus, but Max, to me, is a good rotational player. I don't think he's a starter. So be glad we got those two players back. Obviously, we still may sign other players. The free agency pool is not deep. There's not a lot of talent out there. But I'm sure most people are probably picking their favorite power forwards that they would want for us to sign. So I would think that's where we would go to sign someone. I know there's a whole situation with Sexton. Sexton's a good young player. I don't know how we make it work, but we've been linked to him. I wouldn't mind having Sexton. He's a good player coming off an injury. So you gotta remember that, but he's young, so he'll probably bounce back quick. We also been linked to Gordon Hayward. I don't know what a trade for Hayward would be, because as far as I know, he's not a free agent. So he's a good player. We almost had him a couple seasons ago, I thought. But, then again, his former coach was in Boston. So I feel like he just had to come talk to us just to make it look like, okay, I didn't already plan to go to Boston. But obviously he was going to go to Boston. So, if we get Gordon Hayward, I don't know what the team roster would look like, but he's not a young player, so I wouldn't expect too much, but always good to have someone who can score the ball, because that's what we ran into with the Celtics. We ran out of guys that could score the ball with Tyler Hero being hurt. So those are things to consider. But again, this off season is not a disaster. Like, stop letting people telling you that this is like a D or F off season. Like, it's a neutral off season. We're the #1 seed. So this whole idea that if we don't go and trade for a borderline all-star player, it's a bad offseason is silly to me. Like, I think the worst we can be maybe is the 4th seed in the East, with the current roster or whatever adjustments we make prior to our training camp. We don't know what the final roster is going to look like, but I feel like we definitely a top 4 team in the East. Don't panic. It's a neutral offseason. It's a C offseason, and that's how I feel about the offseason as a Heat fan that is really into basketball and follows everything around the NBA. And, it's good to be a Heat fan, but I think a lot of us are just stuck in this Heat bubble, and we don't really interact with other NBA fans just to kind of, be in the know in terms of like who's good, and just to kind of get a grade of like how the offseason was. I've seen various reviews of the offseason moves, and I'd say the good ones are usually giving us a C. That's what it is, guys. But we'll see where this goes. We'll see what happens after training camp. Hopefully make another signing, but it's a neutral offseason, guys. All right, Heat Nation, that's it for this video. I'm going to be making a bunch of new videos, so be on the lookout for the new content. So please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and keep an eye out for the new content.